Hey, I'm glad you could join me again for the Dale Wiley Show. Today I'm sitting down with a great producer and rock and roll guitarist, a guy that's been involved with Joan Jett and Lou Reed and the Del Lords and so many other great rock and rollers, Eric Ambel. Let's start with a track from his 2004 solo record, Knucklehead. Glad to have you here, Eric.
Well, thank you for the invite.
Tell me this. I asked this question of Brian Henneman the other night. What was your first memory of music? What first attracted you to music?
Well, my dad liked the big band stuff and Sinatra and also the marching band music. So I was aware of music at a pretty young age, and I really liked it. Beyond that, I really liked music. Beyond that, even before the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan, I remember being in my little town, Batavia, Illinois. It's like one of these towns where there's a river that runs north and south, and the main street, actually Wilson Street, goes east-west, and there's a bridge, and I just remember the marching band. They were coming down the street. I heard the complete song. And then as the band went by, I'm standing right on the sidewalk. I heard the flutes, and then I heard the trumpets, and then I heard the saxophones, all the individual parts. And then as it got a little further away, it was the complete song again. And it's that stuck with me it stuck with me through life, and it was almost like I understood multi-track recording at that point. It was a real mind blower, and I always go back to it. And I ended up, my mom bid against herself 3 times in a farm auction and got us a baby grand piano for $120 when I was in 3rd grade. So I took the piano lessons, and then I started playing trumpet with my school in 5th grade, and I stayed with that all the way through college. Even when I had kind of pretty much quit college, I stayed at the University of Wyoming for 1 extra semester because I knew I'd never ever get to play in a marching band again. So that's like just really big stuff that I learned so much doing that stuff, you know.
Wow. Now, how did you get to Wyoming?
It was 1,000 miles from my parents, and they had skiing, and it was pretty inexpensive at the time. So a lot cheaper than Colorado. So. Oh
yeah, but you pretty well always knew you wanted to be a musician. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I had for a while I thought that I might want to be a dentist because dentists, they get called doctor, but they don't have to work on the weekends.
Right. There's not as much call in that job.
But you still get called doctor, and you know, you could have a boat and stuff like that.
So when you left Wyoming, where did you head after that?
Well, I started the first punk rock band in Wyoming, the Dirty Dogs, and we had changed our name to the Accelerators so we could have one big gig. We had been banned by the university, and we needed one big get-out-of-town gig with the payday, so we changed our name to the Accelerators, and named after in my hometown of Batavia, Illinois, they had the Fermi Lab, which up until 2 years ago was the largest nuclear particle accelerator on Earth. But then we went to L.A. as a band, as the Accelerators. And you know, we were out there for a while, and then the band kind of imploded, and then I started playing with some other guys, Top Jimmy and Rick L. Rick.
Okay, and Top Jimmy is, of course, the Top Jimmy that was forever memorialized in the Van Halen song, correct?
Yes, and he went on later to have the band Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pigs, but I was in the sort of original Top Jimmy band where I replaced Billy Zoom in that band, and so that was a big thing for me. And it was really the same core band for both Jimmy and Rick L. Rick. Rick L. Rick was a real pivotal guy in the L.A. punk rock thing. His first band was called F Word, and they were really they were like one of the very first L.A. bands. And neither Jimmy or Rick are alive anymore. But then when Joan put the ad in the paper, Joan Jett is looking for 3 good men, she had these auditions, and tons of people auditioned. And this is part of the story that I just learned a few months ago from John Doe. John Doe was helping her do the auditions, and after like this second excruciating night, you know, John Doe, he told me, he said, I told her, I said, these guys are all assholes. You should just get Eric and Danny and Gary. I mean, they're already a band, and, you know, you played with them, and they're cool, and that's what happened. So, I mean, the funny part of it is that it really was kind of my band.
Right.
So,
and so Joan had come off of playing in the Runaways by that time. I mean, what was her plan? I mean, what drew you to that
Well, she had already made the record Bad Reputation. She met through somebody that the record that became Bad Reputation was actually supposed to be a soundtrack for a movie that would be a movie about an all-girl band. And the movie project kind of went south, but then she had this record and started the band. And she had been on the scene. You know, she produced the Germs GI album, which was an incredible record, one of the best records from the LA punk rock days. And you know, she had really good songs, and so our band was sort of like all-star LA punk rock band, and you know, there are people that were on the scene back then that kind of looked at her and us like almost like the Great White Hope to have, you know, a band from the punk rock scene succeed, you know.
Right. And what year did you join with her?
I think it was 78. I was there 78 through 81.
Okay. And then, but unfortunately, last year when she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame kind of made a call as to who got to come up on stage. Is that right?
Yeah, well, that's you know, I love the museum. The politics is what it is, and you know, if you notice a lot of these things when people get inducted, they basically pick, rather than the original band, they pick sort of what I refer to as the MTV band.
Right.
But you know, it was nice that every one of them thanked me. Of course, they cut that all out on the by the time it got to HBO, but you know, it was really something being in that band, and you know, it was really something to play I Love Rock and Roll for 2 years before it came out, and just see a song like that could just win in any situation, you know, in the most dire. You know, the very last gig that I played with them was opening for Alice Cooper at the Cape Cod Coliseum, and the people hated us. They were throwing quarters at us, you know, but we played that last song and we owned the place, you know.
I guess one of the things that, you know, maybe people don't really think about or understand is how underrated she is as a musician.
Yeah, well, she knows what she can do, and she's also, you know, I said this in this essay that I had to write this essay when they got inducted because people were asking me about it, and I just had to kind of like make my thoughts clear. But her right hand rhythm clock, you know, is as good as the best people that I've played with, you know, including Dan Baird, who can make his right hand sound like a synthesizer. You know, I just never saw her make a rhythm mistake ever, you know.
And what else did you what kind of struck you about her and what she was doing?
Well, I mean, back then we were just all having a really great time. You know, that's really kind of what it was about. And the guy, Ian Copeland, who was Stuart Copeland's brother,
right.
You know,
right. Mm-hmm.
He had this, it was a new booking agency, and FBI. IRS was the record label, and then FBI was the booking agency. And we played a lot of places, you know, we played all over the country. We played a lot of places that never had original music before the night that we did it, you know. And it was a real sort of old school barn burning kind of the way it felt. There wasn't even hardly a circuit yet,
Right.
And so it was really, it felt unique.
Yeah. Well, I remember talking to our great friend Lou Whitney about how he said it kind of felt like you were drug dealers passing on the interstate.
Mm-hmm.
You were traveling the same roads, but you didn't know about each other.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I hadn't met Lou yet, but I had played a gig at Fourth and Pine with Wonderly. I found out years later that was the Dog People that opened for us there, so.
Oh, wow.
A lot of St. Louis for me, the Graham Chapel gig was really incredible. I mean, like the idea that we were playing at this Graham Chapel was just nuts.
So after you got done playing with Joan, what did you do after that?
I realized that I really liked New York. I felt like you could get done in a day in New York what took a week in LA, and I just never had the right hair color for LA. And in LA, it just seemed like you meet people and they just ask about your car or what neighborhood you lived in. And in New York, it just seemed, even though I was totally broke, I could be in a group with really diverse people. It was more about what you could do, So, I went home to Illinois and worked concrete construction while I Love Rock and Roll was climbing the charts, so I could save up money to come back to New York. And then after I came back to New York through a few crazy circumstances, I ended up, in a room with Scott Kempner and in a band that day really became the Del Lords. And that was all kind of funny because I never even heard of punk rock before when I lived in Illinois. I won tickets to see these two bands I never heard of, how you would call up on the radio. And I won tickets to see the Ramones and the Dictators. And, so then I ended up in a band with the guy from the Dictators. And
right.
So
now Scott is just a kind of guy who's crossed paths with everybody. Tell me a little bit about Scott Kempner.
Well, I think the most interesting part was that, so he was in the Dictators and he was a rhythm guitar, sort of a clock, rhythm guitar guy. I think he only wrote like half a song on all their albums, because it was Andy's thing. And I think the most interesting part about Scott was that he really had been developing this songwriting thing on his own and, dying to do a rock and roll band.
Right.
And he was a big Who fan, and it was, for the Del Lords, for most of our time together back then, it really felt like, like Pete Townsend wrote songs for the Who to play them,
Right.
And it really felt like Scott was writing these songs for our band. It wasn't
right.
like he wrote the song and then we played them. They were written for us as a band, and I think that's the most interesting. That's what really made it. We couldn't have done it without that. Obviously.
Wow. And I mean, the Del Lords had about as much of a New York vibe as any band possibly could. You guys had a lot of great New York compatriots and played with some cool people. Can you tell me about that?
Well, we kind of used the thing, with Joan. when we first got the Blackhearts together, we got the sort of the way that we launched the band was the way that the Who did it, where they picked the worst night of the week and played marquee. They played the marquee every Tuesday, until they had a following. And we did that with Joan, and that's what we did with the Del Lords. With the Del Lords, though, we rehearsed every day, and we knew that because of some of the people that we knew, that kind of important people could see us really early on. So we played for 6 months without playing in the city. We were going out to, our drummer, Frank Panero, lived way out in Northport, Long Island. We played some crappy bars out there, and we got our thing together before we ever played, and then we went to Hilly and got a month of Tuesdays at CBGB's, and that kind of launched the band.
That should be the title of the Del Lords biography, a month of Tuesdays.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me when did Lou Reed? You guys ended up opening some dates for Lou, or how did that get involved?
Somebody got him a stack of records. Like, check out these bands, and he picked us, and he really, really took us under his wing out there on tour. He would come into the dressing room all the time. We used to do the Springsteen song Johnny 99. We'd do it kind of a cappella. He would come in there and sort of vibe with us. So he was really, I never forget it, like as a kid, listening to those records when I was much younger, and it's this deep, dark thing. But one of the most disorienting things I ever saw, we're at one of these really pretty outdoor amphitheaters down sort of near San Diego, where they have those kind of nice picnicky backstage areas. Uh-huh. And somebody tells Lou this joke, and he goes into like side-splitting laughter, like slapping his knee, And, as a kid in the Midwest reading Rolling Stone and seeing this guy with sunglasses on scowling all the time, it just was the craziest thing that I ever saw. Okay, here I am in Southern California with Lou Reed, side-splitting laughter, slapping his knee,
So you guys always, and I've seen the same thing out of Scott. I mean, for you guys, that was just an amazing relationship, and a guy that really meant a lot to you over the years, and didn't really have any of the negativity that some people.
Oh, no, and it was pretty funny. Like the album after we toured with him, he had the album New York, right? And he basically, if you look at that album cover, he turned himself into the Del Lords. There was 4 of him, and it looked just like our album cover. There were 4 Lou Reeds, like he was his own band, Uh-huh. But he came and guested in our video, and he was a real you couldn't believe what a equipment nut he was. He totally crazy with the equipment. He came to my house when we were making the video, and I had all of my guitars hanging on the wall, and he wanted to play them. And when he got to the Parsons White B-bender, with the pull down pedal steel mechanism on the B string,
right?
He was standing there pulling on that thing with his jaw hanging down for like 15 minutes. He literally, he would talk to you about equipment like for a half an hour longer than anybody could stand talking about equipment.
Wow. Well, and then you met another Lou, a legendary Lou. How did you meet Lou Whitney?
Well, when very early in the Del Lords, there was big snowstorm on Valentine's Day, and Ross the Boss, the heavy metal guitar player from the Dictators who went on to found Manowar, he was like, you guys have to go see this band, the Morels. They have this guitar player that's the most unbelievable guitar player in the world. So we went to the gig, and we meet the whole Morels and saw Donnie, and afterwards we talked to Lou. There was a little connection. This guy, Rich Neeson, who was the Dictators tour manager, he had tour managed Forbert, and somehow, a bunch of the Skeletons ended up playing with Forbert, Donnie and Lou and Lloyd.
Right.
When Steve Forbert had his big hit. So there was this little cross-pollination. But anyway, we're at the Peppermint Lounge, and we gave Lou our demo tape, and he told us right on the spot, he goes, well, if you can come to Springfield, Missouri, I'll record you.
Right.
And that was it, and we bought a van that was like a former telephone van for a couple $100 and drove all the way down there. And we recorded our first demo there, and that demo got us signed to a major label record deal. But even wilder was we had to do this in a week, and we had to stop because the Morels had a gig that Friday night at the Heartbreak Hotel in St. Louis.
Uh-huh.
And Donnie was sick, so Lou sent Rongo with all the Morels equipment because we drove down there with just our guitars. And Lou made a sign that said, Donnie's sick, but Lou sent the Del Lords from New York City, and Rongo sat there at the door and told everybody that they should come in because we were great. And at the time, the Morels were the hottest band in St. Louis, and everybody on the scene came to that gig, and we were immediately like on it in St. Louis,
Right. And was that the gig that Brian came to?
Yeah, Brian tells the story that there was I think ZZ Top's Eliminator had just come out, and Casey played the whole thing, and so he said that I didn't meet him until later, but years later, but he said that he and Tom Parr had driven up, parked in front of the Heartbreak, and waited for the album to finish before they came into our gig.
And they were told they got a money-back guarantee if they came in.
That's right.
Hope you enjoyed part one of my interview with Eric Ambel. Tune in to get the second part of that interview tomorrow and other great interviews and surprises. Visit DaleWiley.com, buy books, throw money, and have a good day. Copyright 2016, Dale Wiley.